They might be hiding the darkest secret in the factory. There's a secret puppet master pulling all the strings, and even the scariest toys are terrified of him. They call this mysterious figure the prototype. He's been lurking in the shadows since the very beginning, controlling everything from behind the scenes. Today, we're going to unravel the mystery of what happened to the prototype, who or what he really is, and why everyone in Playtime Co. fears him. Get ready for some serious chills and mind-blowing revelations about Experiment 1006, the creature that might be behind all the horrors of Poppy Playtime. So, what is the prototype? Picture the smartest, sneakiest monster imaginable. That's him. The prototype, also known as Experiment 1006, is not just another giant toy like Huggy Wuggy or Mommy Longlegs. No, this thing is way more dangerous. It's basically the brains behind every terrible event in the factory. Unlike the other toy monsters that mostly act on instinct, the prototype can think, plan, and learn. In fact, early on we found out it has an unprecedented level of intelligence. It's clever enough to fix things, build gadgets, and even outsmart the humans who created it. And it's been missing inside the factory for years, plotting in the dark where nobody could find it. From the very start of the game's story, the prototype has been watching us. Remember at the end of Chapter 1 when we opened Poppy's case? We thought letting Poppy out was the right thing to do, freeing a sweet doll locked away. But freeing Poppy set a bigger plan into motion. By Chapter 2, things got even creepier. As we escaped Mommy Longlegs, we witnessed something truly unsettling. Mommy's screaming final words. She was being dragged away by a mysterious metal claw that snatched her broken body into the darkness. Mommy Longlegs, who had been chasing us relentlessly, suddenly cried out in pure fear. "What have you done? He'll make me part of him. You can't do this to me." Imagine that. This terrifying mommy monster was begging not to be taken by him. That him was the prototype. If a creature as freaky and powerful as Mommy Longlegs is afraid of the prototype, you know he must be incredibly dangerous. Mommy's fear gave us a huge clue about what the prototype does. It takes the toys' bodies and uses them for itself. "He'll make me part of him," she screamed. That tells us the prototype doesn't just kill other toys, it absorbs them, possibly adding their parts to its own body. Think about that for a second. Every time we defeated a big bad toy, the prototype was lurking nearby to collect the leftovers. When Huggy Wuggy fell from the catwalk in Chapter 1, did he really die? We saw him fall into the factory depths, and later on there were hints of blood and fur, but no body. It's very possible that the prototype retrieved Huggy Wuggy's remains too. Then, in Chapter 2, it grabs Mommy's severed pieces. Chapter after chapter, anytime a toy gets destroyed, the prototype swoops in with that metal claw and takes what's left. It's like a vulture picking up scraps, except these scraps might be used to build itself up. By the next time we see the prototype fully, it could be an amalgamation of all the monsters we've faced. A giant nightmare creature made of Huggy, Mommy, and more, all combined. How scary is that? Up until now, the prototype has been hiding in the shadows. We've only seen glimpses, that clawed metal hand, and maybe a silhouette or two. In Chapter 2, all we saw was the claw. In Chapter 3 and 4, there were more sightings. If you were paying attention, you might have noticed spidery limbs skittering in the dark corridors or a pair of eerie eyes watching from a vent. By Chapter 4, which is appropriately titled Safe Haven, there were moments where you could spot his legs briefly. It's like the game was slowly showing us pieces of this thing but never the whole body, saving the worst for last. And trust me, the final reveal is going to be insane, because the prototype's full form is rumored to be absolutely monstrous. Some secret images and shrines in the game even hint at how he might look, a twisted mix of organic flesh and mechanical parts taken from different toys, all fused together into one giant creature. Just thinking about it gives me goosebumps. Now, aside from physically stealing toy parts, what else has the prototype been up to? Well, it turns out he's been puppeteering events in the factory for a long time. He's not called the Puppet Master for nothing. Years ago, when Playtime Co. was still running, The prototype was just one of many experiments the company created in their attempt to bring toys to life. But unlike the others, 1006, the prototype, was special. He was extremely smart and self-aware. The scientists kept him locked up in a lab chamber, monitoring him constantly. But he wouldn't stay locked up. According to old recordings and logs left behind, the prototype was clever enough to build a makeshift laser from a broken alarm clock in his room. Can you imagine a monster toy constructing a gadget out of spare parts? He used that little laser to disable a security camera for just under 30 seconds, enough time to hide and force a guard to enter the room. When the guard came in to investigate, the prototype attacked. By the time security realized what happened, one person was dead, and 1006 had nearly escaped. That's how cunning he is. Even while locked in a cell, he found a way to trick his captors. This incident freaked out a lot of the staff. Some scientists wanted to destroy the prototype entirely because he was too dangerous. But one scientist, a man named Harley Sawyer, insisted on keeping him alive for study. Sawyer seemed weirdly fascinated by the prototype, even protective of it, calling it interesting and noting how it showed a new trait every session. Maybe Sawyer had an ulterior motive. We'll get back to him later. The prototype did eventually escape for good. It happened in the late 1980 seconds. He broke out of confinement and vanished into the depths of the factory. At that time, Playtime Co. had an orphanage on site called Playcare, where a bunch of children with no families lived. The company's idea was to give orphans a home and maybe have them test toys. Sounds nice on the surface, right? When 1006 got loose, he didn't go on a killing spree immediately. Instead, he did something unexpected. He found a lonely orphan boy named Theodore and befriended him. Yes, you heard that right. The big bad prototype made a friend. This kid Theodore was troubled and unhappy, and the prototype somehow started talking to him. We're not sure exactly how. Did he speak? Use telepathy? Or maybe appear as a friendly toy? He encouraged the boy to do naughty things around the factory, like sabotage equipment. Basically, he tried to recruit this child as a little helper in causing chaos. The staff eventually figured out that Theodore was talking about a friend who told him to do these things. They thought it was just an imaginary friend. I mean, who would guess it was an escaped experiment monster giving him instructions? But the staff soon realized something was very wrong. One day, the prototype decided it was time to escape the factory completely. He told Theodore to help him. The plan was dangerous. They needed to open a big locked gate. The boy stole 2 special grab packs, you know, those backpack gadgets with the extending hands that we players use, and he got a green hand upgrade to power up a door. The idea was for Theodore to power open a maintenance door so the prototype could get out, and the kid would presumably come with him. Unfortunately, things went horribly wrong. The boy overcharged the power in the green hand by accident. He was just a kid, after all, not an engineer, and electrocuted himself. Theodore collapsed, badly hurt. At that moment, the prototype had a choice: run away and leave his young friend dying, or save the boy but lose his chance to escape. And surprisingly, the prototype chose the boy. He picked up the injured Theodore. Keep in mind, we've only seen this creature's claw, and maybe a part of him, so picturing him carrying a child is wild, and took him to the factory's medical office. A scientist, none other than Thomas Clark, saw the prototype carrying the child into his office, and then security teams arrived and recaptured 1006. Imagine the shock. This deadly experiment everyone feared actually saved a child's life at the cost of his own freedom. It's hard to say if he did it out of genuine care or if he was just being strategic. Maybe he figured Theodore would owe him and become a devoted helper later. In any case, this incident shows the prototype isn't a simple, mindless monster. He can make calculated decisions, even compassionate-looking ones, if it serves his goals. After that, the prototype was locked up again for a while. But you can't keep a genius monster trapped forever. By the mid-90 seconds, specifically 1995, things reached a boiling point. That's when an event called the Hour of Joy occurred. though it was anything but joyful for the humans at Playtime Co. The prototype somehow got out again, possibly with help from someone on the inside. Mr. Harley Sawyer, perhaps? And this time, he went all out. He basically took over the entire factory. He rallied all the other experiments, the bigger and more dangerous ones, and turned them against the staff. Picture the scene. The 8th of August, 1995. The Playtime Co. Factory is full of activity because some employees are busy moving one of the toy creatures, Kissy Missy, the friendly pink Huggy, actually, to a new location. Suddenly, alarms start blaring. All the toy experiments, Huggy Wuggy, Cat Bee, Candy Cat, all of them break free from their areas. Under the prototype's influence, these toys start attacking every adult in sight. Absolute mayhem. The creatures that were once contained or obedient go on a rampage, mindlessly slaughtering the scientists, guards, and workers. It was a full-on jailbreak and massacre orchestrated by the prototype. Within hours, almost every adult in the factory was dead. This was the catastrophe that ended Playtime Co. for good. The company was shut down after this incident, because how could it continue after losing everyone? But the prototype didn't kill everyone. Importantly, he spared all the children, the orphans from play care, and also some of the toys that he might have seen as allies or useful. The orphans were gathered up and taken down into the laboratory levels beneath the factory. Why? The prototype promised all the experiments something: freedom. He told them if they followed him, they'd finally be free and never have to be prisoners or lab subjects again. To the toys, many of whom probably had human consciousness or feelings, that sounded pretty good. He also spared the kids, presumably because he has a soft spot for children or because harming kids wasn't part of his plan. Instead, he kept the children alive but asleep down in the labs, perhaps preserving them for some reason we don't yet know. Maybe he intended to protect them, or use them later, or perhaps he just didn't want to be a murderer of innocents. Now here's where things get even darker. After the massacre, the prototype made a grim decision. The toys realized they couldn't just walk out of the factory into the world. They might be captured by authorities or scientists from outside, and then they'd be right back where they started, or worse. The prototype apparently told them leaving the factory was too risky. They had to stay hidden underground, but they had one big problem: how to survive with no food or energy source. And this is gruesome. The prototype had all the human bodies dragged into the factory's depths, and the toys fed on them. Yes, the living toys ate the remains of the staff to survive. That's beyond horrifying. Poppy, the doll girl, witnessed this and was shocked to her core. She was disgusted and horrified by the slaughter and the cannibalistic feeding. This was the moment Poppy turned against the prototype. She hated him for what he did. Even if she understood the reason, he argued that if any toy left the factory, it would doom them all. So better the humans die than all living toys die. It was just too horrific. After securing his control, the prototype then double-crossed Poppy. He locked Poppy inside her glass case again, essentially putting her in a forced time-out for who knows how long, possibly a decade. Can you imagine? Poppy is actually the spirit of a little girl. We'll talk about that soon. And she was shoved into a case, fully conscious, for years by this monster. It's no wonder that when we, the player, eventually arrive at the abandoned factory years later, we find Poppy in that case. That's where he left her, presumably to keep her out of his way since she disagreed with him. All right, take a breath. That's a lot of backstory. Now, fast forward roughly 10 years to the present time of the game, the early 2000s, probably 2005. We, the player, an ex-employee, are drawn back to the abandoned factory by a mysterious letter. It hinted that the staff had disappeared, but maybe they're still here, something along those lines. Who sent that letter? That's still a mystery. Some think it might have been Poppy reaching out for help. Others think maybe the prototype lured us in as part of some scheme. In any case, we come back, and we step right into this nightmare that the prototype created. Chapter 1. We unknowingly release Poppy, which, ironically, the prototype didn't want, since he locked her up. Oops, our bad. Chapter 2. we see the signs of the prototype's presence. The claw-grabbing mommy and that ominous tape about Experiment 1006 is missing. And today's events are no doubt in relation to him. That tape basically confirmed, to those paying attention, that hey, the big bad boss of this place hasn't shown himself yet, but he's out there. By the end of Chapter 2, Poppy tries to help us escape on a train, but changes her mind last second. She says something like, "I'm sorry, I can't let you leave. We need to go to Playcare." She redirects the train, clearly on a mission. At the time, we weren't sure why she betrayed us, but now it makes sense. Poppy knew the orphans were still down there in Playcare, or the lab, kept asleep. She needed our help to rescue them from the prototype's clutches. Poppy had a plan to undo the horrors of the past. Unfortunately, things don't go smoothly. By Chapter 3, which takes place in Playcare, the orphanage area, we're dealing with creepy new enemies and puzzles, and Poppy is around trying to guide us, or so we think. During that chapter, an innocent voice helps us out. A sweet, childlike voice named Ollie seems to be giving us tips and encouragement. Poppy trusts this voice as well. She believes it might be one of the children, or maybe a friend. For a while, we all get fooled. But guess who that voice really was? The prototype. Yep, this crafty monster can imitate voices and pretend to be someone he's not. He literally mimicked the voice of a young boy. Ollie was apparently a real orphan who had existed, maybe a friend of Poppy's long ago. Imagine how twisted that is. Poppy thought she had a kind ally, possibly even a ghost or memory of a child helping her. But it was actually her worst enemy, the prototype, playing mind games. By the end of Chapter 4 Safe Haven, this truth comes out. It's confirmed that Ollie's voice was the prototype all along. That reveal must have been devastating for Poppy, realizing she'd been betrayed and toyed with, no pun intended, for years by this creature. And yes, Poppy and we weren't the only ones the prototype manipulated. Remember Harley Sawyer, the scientist obsessed with 1006? Turns out, after the Hour of Joy massacre, the prototype spared Dr. Sawyer's life. He didn't kill him when every other adult got taken down. Why? Because Sawyer was useful. In the aftermath, the prototype actually met with Harley Sawyer face to face, or whatever the prototype's face is, and had a conversation. He told Sawyer something like, "All your suggestions so far have failed. Maybe sparing you was a mistake. We're running out of time." Sawyer pleaded that he just needed more time, and that he was the prototype's best shot at accomplishing something. The prototype warned him essentially, "If you're stalling or if you fail me, remember the only reason you're alive is because you're useful. I could strip you for parts if I wanted." Yikes. So Sawyer was basically forced into working for the prototype. We suspect Sawyer was trying to do scientific research for him, possibly to solve a problem that the prototype alone couldn't. What could that be? Perhaps finding a way for them to leave the factory safely, or figuring out some cure or change for the experiments. It's still a bit of a mystery what suggestions Sawyer had and what he was trying to accomplish on the prototype's behalf. But one thing is clear. The prototype was using human knowledge to further his goals. He isn't just a brute force villain. He's strategic, willing to cooperate or threaten as needed to get what he wants. By the time we get to the current point in the story, the prototype has basically been behind everything. He's the reason the factory shut down. He's why all these toy monsters exist and are hostile. Many are following his commands or are remnants of his rebellion. He manipulated Poppy and probably orchestrated events so that we, the player, would unknowingly do certain tasks, like releasing Poppy, defeating the toys that he then collects, etc. You could say he's been playing 4D chess while everyone else was playing checkers, and now, all the clues point toward an ultimate showdown coming up. We know Chapter 5, the next part of the game, will drag us even deeper into his lair. An underground sector called the Labs. This is where the prototype was originally created and contained. It's his stomping grounds now, basically his home turf, filled with all the dark secrets and unfinished experiments of Playtime Co. The tagline for the next chapter literally calls him the deadly puppet master behind the horrifying events of Playtime Co. So yeah, they're flat out telling us The prototype is the final boss. We will finally face off with this monster that's been one step ahead of us the whole time. But going up against him won't be easy. For one, he's probably huge and horribly strong now, after adding all those toy parts to himself. We're likely going to see his full body revealed at last. Imagine a towering figure with mismatched limbs, maybe a long spider-like leg, a furry blue arm of Huggy, maybe Mommy Longleg's stretchy rubber parts, maybe pieces of other experiments we haven't even seen yet, plus that metallic claw and other mechanical enhancements. It's going to be a true horror show. Not only that, but we might also have to deal with the fact that Huggy Wuggy is back. Yes, the original blue fuzzy nightmare might be coming for round 2, but this time, likely under the prototype's direct control. One teaser for Chapter 5 mentions Playtime's security system, Huggy Wuggy, in hot pursuit. That suggests Huggy, or perhaps a modified version of him, is patrolling the depths, acting on the prototype's orders to hunt intruders. So don't be surprised if Huggy returns, even meaner than before, trying to stop us from reaching the prototype. And it's not just Huggy. The deeper we go, the more twisted experiments we might encounter. Some of them might even help us. There are hints that in the dark, there are tortured toys who might not like the prototype's rule and could aid us to defeat him. But can we trust them? Hard to say, since trickery is everywhere in this place. Now, let's talk about the big question. Who is the prototype, really? We know he's Experiment 1006, the 1006th experiment of Playtime Co. But is there more to his identity? There's a reason this creature is so different from all the others. He's not just a random amalgam of toys. He has human-level intelligence, and maybe even human memories or emotions. Many players have theorized that the prototype might actually be, or contain the mind, of Elliot Ludwig, the very founder of Playtime Co. This is the craziest and most exciting theory, so let's break it down. Elliot Ludwig was the genius toy maker who started the company back in the 1930 seconds. He devoted his life to making children happy, but his life had tragedies. His wife left him, and worse, he had a beloved daughter who died young. We know this because the Poppy doll was literally based on his daughter, even named after her. Losing his daughter devastated him, and it seems to have driven him to pursue some wild scientific projects, possibly trying to conquer death itself. Fast forward to the time of the experiments. We have evidence that by the 1960 seconds and 70 seconds, Playtime Co. began doing secret experiments on bringing toys to life using something called poppy flower gel. The science behind it is a bit fuzzy, but basically they were infusing toys with some kind of strange substance and possibly human consciousness to animate them. In one of the tapes we find the untitled tape in Chapter 4. It's confirmed that Poppy Playtime, the doll, actually has the consciousness of Elliot's daughter inside. Yes, Poppy is literally his little girl brought back in doll form, or at least something along those lines. That was a huge reveal. Poppy says in the tape, "I wish you were here, Dad," addressing Elliot Ludwig, and it's made clear she knows she's his daughter. That means Elliot succeeded in one part of his experiment, immortality for his child, by putting her into a toy. Now, if he did that for his daughter, what about himself? Here's where things got disturbing. After his daughter's death and the company's push into human experiments, Elliot became a bit reclusive and strange. Neighbors saw him coming and going at odd hours. He was likely spending all his time in the factory working on these dark projects. Sometime in the 1980 seconds, Elliot Ludwig died, or at least, he vanished from public life and was said to have died. The company announced his death and that it saddened everyone. But there was a scandal. At the time of his death, authorities discovered the body of a young boy on Ludwig's estate, a boy who had been eviscerated, which means basically disemboweled, a gruesome death. This naturally caused a huge controversy. People wondered, was Elliot Ludwig secretly a murderer? Did he kill a child? Or was he doing some twisted experiment that resulted in a child's death? Playtime Co. rushed to defend his name, suggesting maybe someone planted the body to frame him. Some evidence even hints that Harley Sawyer, the scientist, might have set Elliot up to destroy his reputation. However, this piece of lore was presented in a kind of nightmare vision in the game, which leaves it a bit uncertain. But most signs point to it being true. A child's corpse was found and Elliot had been doing something horrible behind closed doors. Here's what many of us think. Elliot Ludwig, desperate to resurrect his daughter and possibly to cheat his own death, started performing unethical experiments on people. The child found at his house could have been a victim of those experiments. Perhaps he was trying to use a living child, or parts of one, to create a new entity. Maybe Experiment 1006 itself. It's sickening to think about, but if you're trying to fuse human life with a machine or toy, a mad scientist might resort to terrible means. Now, whether Elliot succeeded in transferring his own consciousness into Experiment 1006 or somehow became it, we don't know 100% for sure. But there are a ton of clues linking the prototype to Elliot Ludwig. Love for children. The prototype, despite being brutal, shows a weird care for kids. He saved Theodore, he spared the orphans, and his whole plan after the rebellion was to keep the children safe, albeit in a messed up way, and to ensure the toys could live freely. Elliot Ludwig was known for loving children and wanting to bring them joy. It could be that some part of Elliot's personality, or even Elliot himself, is guiding 1006 to protect kids, just in a very twisted fashion. Hatred for Playtime Co. The prototype clearly hates the company and what it did. He wants it destroyed. Who would have more reason to hate Playtime Co. than someone who knew its darkest secrets? Possibly Elliot himself if he regretted what it became, or a part of him that resents what he had to do. Alternatively, if 1006 is a separate being, perhaps it hates Elliot Ludwig for torturing it. But given how strategic and knowledgeable 1006 is, it often feels like he has insider knowledge of everything. Intelligence and voice mimicry. The prototype can mimic voices and phrases of people. He's literally repeated things Harley Sawyer said in the exact same voice to mock him. He perfectly imitated a child's voice. Where did he learn this skill? Possibly from absorbing or observing humans. If Elliot's mind is in there, maybe it retains the ability to speak as he did. Or maybe 1006 studied Elliot and others to learn how to speak like them. One creepy idea. Maybe 1006 is Elliot, but doesn't even realize it fully. Or he's like a merged being who sometimes channels the voices of those he's incorporated, like those he's killed or absorbed. Poppy is his daughter. This is the biggest emotional clue. If the prototype is Elliot Ludwig, in full or in part, that means Poppy's own father is the one who locked her up and has been terrorizing her. In Chapter 4, Poppy was frightened that the prototype would lock her away again or harm her friends. She even distanced herself from Kissy, Missy, and the player at one point because the prototype threatened her. In one scene, he basically told Poppy he'd put her back in that case, which he originally did after the rebellion, if she didn't do what he wanted. Now, if Prototype is her father, that is incredibly dark. Why would a father threaten and imprison his own daughter? Perhaps because after turning himself into this monster, Elliot lost much of his humanity and is now driven by cold logic or even insanity. Or perhaps the Prototype isn't actually aware that Poppy is his daughter. Maybe if Elliot's consciousness is in there, it's buried or corrupted and he doesn't see Poppy as his little girl, but just as another experiment. Either way, there's a tragic irony. Poppy keeps yearning for her father's presence. "I wish you were here, Dad," she says in that tape, not knowing he might literally be the monster in front of her. If the game reveals that 1006 is Ludwig, it will be a heart-wrenching moment for Poppy, and it adds a huge emotional layer to the final confrontation. Experiment 1006's significance. It's called the Prototype. Prototype of what? Possibly the prototype of a way to live forever. The first truly successful human-to-toy or human-to-monster experiment. It would make sense that the very first perfect experiment would involve the founder himself. Maybe he volunteered himself as a test subject, or his colleagues did it to him, or he did it in secret. Imagine an ending where the prototype reveals in a garbled voice, "I am Elliot Ludwig," or something along those lines. It would connect all the dots. Of course, some have alternative takes. There's a thought that the prototype might not literally be Elliot, but instead an experiment that mimics Elliot. Perhaps 1006 was created by Elliot and tortured by him, like all the experiments were results of painful tests. So 1006 could have developed an obsession with or against Elliot, copying his personality traits. For example, the prototype shows both caring, like Elliot's public persona, caring for children, and cruelty, like the cold scientist side that might have been hidden in Elliot. It's almost like 1006 inherited Elliot's good dad side and his mad scientist side at the same time, which makes him unpredictable. The prototype also often behaves like a strict parent figure to the toys, making hard decisions, even doing awful things for their own good. That could very well be a warped reflection of Elliot Ludwig's mindset. Regardless of whether he is Elliot Ludwig or just inspired by him, one thing is certain. The prototype is intimately tied to the Ludwig story. He has a connection to Poppy, the daughter, and likely to the events that led to the company's fall. He is the final mystery we need to solve. Now, what exactly happened to the prototype up to now, and what might happen next? After Chapter 4's events, Poppy's plans hit a snag. We believe that after revealing his trick, Ollie's voice, and perhaps some confrontation, the prototype managed to capture Poppy again. Yes, it seems, poor Poppy falls right back into his clutches. There's actually a teaser image out for Chapter 5 that is super ominous. It shows the prototype holding what looks like Poppy's doll face in his hand, almost like he ripped her head or face off. It's a chilling image, kind of like that Shakespeare scene of holding a skull, to be or not to be. We're not sure if Poppy is dead or if he just removed her faceplate to maybe disable her. But it clearly means Poppy is in serious danger when Chapter 5 begins. The prototype has essentially won at the end of Chapter 4. He got rid of our allies. We, the player, are left alone. The Chapter 5 synopsis even says, abandoned by your allies. So going into the final chapter, the prototype has Poppy, and possibly Kissy Missy too. Or she's just separated, and he's chasing us with his minions, like Huggy. It's his territory, his rules. The final confrontation is going to be intense. We will likely have to navigate the labs, uncover the last secrets, like possibly finding out the truth of who 1006 is, maybe through final logs, or even a direct monologue from the prototype himself. We might encounter some of those orphans who have been sleeping all these years. Maybe they are still alive down there. Imagine finding the Playcare kids, now grown or experimented on, hidden in some cryo-sleep or something. We might also meet other experiments that either fight us or help us. One teaser trailer even introduced something labeled Experiment 1202. So, there is another experiment to look out for. But 1202 might be just another monster guarding the way, whereas 1006 is the real mastermind. One thing I suspect is that the prototype's full body will finally be revealed in all its horrifying glory, and we'll have a showdown possibly involving machinery, puzzles. Maybe we have to use a new grab pack tool to defeat him, and maybe with the help of a reformed toy or two, could Kissy Missy come to save the day? Or maybe a character like Boxy Boo from the spin-off appears? We'll see. It's going to be the culmination of everything. All the toy enemies, all the lore, coming together. The big emotional payoff will be if Poppy confronts the prototype. We might see Poppy pleading with him or trying to get through to any humanity left in him. If he is Elliot, her father, maybe at the very end, something will happen to reveal that. Maybe a moment of hesitation or a line he says that triggers her realization. Perhaps he calls her by a pet name or says something only her father would say. That would be an oh my god moment for sure. Or conversely, if the prototype is about to be destroyed, maybe by us, or an explosion, or whatever, Poppy might discover it in the aftermath, like finding a piece of him that reveals the truth of who he was. There's even a rumor that maybe our player character has some personal connection. Some think the player might have been an orphan from Playtime Co. or even one of the employees' kids, but that's less clear. By the end, we might actually put an end to the prototype's reign. Perhaps we manage to deactivate him, or he falls apart after a tough fight. But there's also the possibility of a tragic ending. What if taking him down means also losing Poppy or others? If the monster is indeed her father in any way, that might make things complicated. Would she want us to destroy him or try to save what's left of him? It's a horror story, so I'm not expecting a happy ending exactly, but hopefully a satisfying one. We also have to wonder, after all this, can the living toys ever truly be free? Or will they just remain hidden in the factory forever? Poppy initially seemed to think the experiments, the toys, would be better off with the prototype than with cruel scientists, because at least he wouldn't outright kill them. He kept them alive, in hiding. But he also turned them into killers and led them to cannibalism. So not exactly a great alternative. Maybe Poppy's goal, and by extension ours, is to find a third option. Not the company's cruel experiments, not the prototype's violent rebellion, but something else. Like maybe evacuating the children and giving the toy experiments some kind of peace. It's hard to say, but I'm rooting for the kids to be saved at least, and Poppy to get some closure with her father's fate. In terms of leaks and teasers, aside from that image of the prototype holding Poppy's face, there's talk that Chapter 5 will have some new characters, like a spooky white voodoo doll toy and others. But those are likely minor compared to the prototype confrontation. There was also a short teaser showing a dark room with broken toys hanging from hooks and a shadowy creature getting electrocuted, possibly hinting at a new puzzle or a new way we might fight these things. Maybe we can shock the precedents, prototype or others with electricity. Every hint we've gotten suggests Chapter 5 will be the grand finale. Although the developers have cheekily not 100% confirmed it's the final chapter, all signs point to it wrapping up the current story. We're going into the heart of darkness, literally into the prototype's domain. It would make sense for that to be the endpoint of this saga. So, to sum it all up, the prototype is the ultimate antagonist of Poppy Playtime, a genius-level experiment gone rogue who's been collecting body parts and manipulating everyone from the shadows. What happened to him is a tale of experiments and betrayal created by Playtime Co. He escaped, caused a massacre. Hour of Joy built himself into a stronger creature by scavenging other toys and took control of the factory's survivors. Who he is remains a mystery, but the strongest theory is that he's tied to Elliot Ludwig, the founder, possibly containing Elliot's consciousness, or even being a transformed version of Elliot himself. This would mean the kind old toy maker became the very monster he might have helped create, all in a twisted attempt to defy death and play God. Along the way, the prototype tricked Poppy Elliot's own daughter's soul in a doll and used everyone's trust against them. Now we, the player, are the last thing standing in the prototype's way. The next chapter will likely reveal the truth and decide the fate of everyone involved. Poppy, the kids, the toys, and perhaps Elliot's legacy. Will we manage to stop the prototype's evil plan and free the factory from its nightmare? Or will we, like so many before, become just another set of spare parts for him to collect? One thing's for sure, when we finally come face to face with Experiment 1006, it's going to be an epic and emotional showdown that Poppy Playtime fans will never forget. Stay tuned, because the answers to these mysteries are just around the corner, and they're bound to be shocking. The story of the prototype is the key to everything that happened in that creepy toy factory, and we're about to unlock it. Subscribe for more.